Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We're back with another exciting GESS Talks webinar, and today's discussion is all about early years education. We've got an amazing panel of experienced early years practitioners and leaders that'll share some of their contemporary visions for how early years should look like, and most importantly, how we can meet our children's needs in an inclusive and empowering way. You'll hear from them shortly, but first, I'd like to say a big thank you to our webinar sponsor, Kinderpedia. Kinderpedia helps child-care centers and schools simplify their administrative and financial flows, save time, and foster a dynamic communication between teachers and parents. Trusted by more than 2,000 schools and nurseries in 25 countries, Kinderpedia offers tailored solutions to the most common digital challenges of any education institution, whether it's school and nursery management, classroom management, student progress tracking, family engagement, or financial management. And a few bits of information before we get underway. For all attendees, you can find the control panel on the side. There's a Q&A tab and another one for handouts. We've got some really interesting handouts from our panelists and sponsor that you can browse and download at any time during the webinar. Please feel free to use the Q&A, ask us questions, as the panelists would love to hear your thoughts, and we'll try to address as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our chair and moderator, Dr. Sarah Rogers, the founder and CEO of Early Years Educational Services and Quest Direct, to introduce the rest of the panel. Thank you, and over to you, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you very much, Danny. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. We're so delighted to have so many people joining us, and it really shows us the importance of early years education. We've got a fantastic panel today, so I'll start off by introducing them briefly and asking them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into our very far-reaching discussion as well. So Suzanne, welcome Suzanne. Suzanne Perkowsky, Head of Academics at Boundless Life. Susan has been an educator for over 30 years and was the co-founder of Nordic Schools. Sorry, Suzanne. But what I'm really interested in is your recent experiences about Boundless. So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about Boundless, please, Suzanne?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the team for setting this up and giving us an opportunity for some really exciting discussions. My background is I've worked globally, Saudi Arabia, China, Singapore, in the US, in the UK, and of course Finland. And the bulk of my education experience comes through Finland and the Nordic Finnish curriculum. And through New Nordic School, I wanted to see what I found missing was these leaps from one level of education to the next, and started developing a continuum that goes all the way from babies and eventually will go up to high school. And right now with Boundless Life, we have the opportunity to bring this live. And Boundless Life offers a turnkey solution for families, global nomad families, who at one stage thought that if they had kids, they would have to stop traveling and working remotely, or they would have to homeschool. And our CEO and one of the co-founders and the founding members of Boundless Life came up with this amazing concept of different destinations. And what we offer there are ready apartments that are up to Boundless Life standards. So they're very, very beautiful, beautiful locations. Our locations are chosen. The first step is seeing the safety of the kids. And in these locations, we have apartments where we build little communities. They're within a walking distance of each other and walking distance of the education center. And we have a co-working space where I'm sitting right now. So if you see people walking around behind me. And our education center is the key. That is why families stay with us, because we offer education that follows the kids, whichever destination they're in. And we've broken down a year's curriculum into 3 cohorts, what we call cohorts. And they revolve around the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And it goes right through from the age of 1 till 12 is what we offer now. And we have platforms that will enable the kids to move. Say, I'm in Tuscany right now, and a family will move from Tuscany to Syros, Greece. And the education will just carry on. And there'll be a smooth transition. And
it sounds amazing, and it really was what we're going to talk about today, that there is more than one way of educating a child, and that, you know, that open boundaries, that boundless life sounds absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. I'm very jealous that you're sitting in Tuscany today, but thank you for joining us. Matthew is sitting in London, where I was born, a Londoner, so thank you very, very much for joining us today. And I know you spent a lot of your time teaching in inner London schools as well, didn't you, before you started your international career? But you're back there now. So could you tell us about some of your experiences, Matthew, please?
Yeah. I started teaching. I did 15 years teaching and leading schools in inner London, nursery schools, primary schools, junior schools, infant schools, the whole gamut up to 11. And then in 2013, I took a career swerve and spent 5 years working on pavements in Bangladesh. I just saw someone saying good evening from Bangladesh. So Shubharatri Farhat. So,
very impressive.
it doesn't go much beyond that, to be perfect. And then I went into international teaching for a year, and now I have the privilege of being the head of the International Early Years Curriculum, which is part of an international curriculum from sort of covering the ages of 2 to 5. 2 to 14. And I do the 2 to 5 year olds. I write the curriculum, work closely with a small section of the 480 schools that use it around the world. You know, making sure that school voice is incorporated into curriculum development as we continue to look at the trends. You know, so we've, a bit like Suzanne, we've taken education for sustainable development and global citizenship education and embedded it in a curriculum level from 2 all the way up to 14.
It sounds fantastic, and what I'm really interested in as we talk today is about how it works in different contexts as well, which is the same for Suzanne, you know, that global approach. So thank you, that's a wealth of expertise there. And last but certainly not least, Lama, thank you so much for joining us today. And you're the CEO, Middle East and India, of the Babilou family. So you're in Dubai today, aren't you? I know you've been with Babilou, I think, since 2014, or since before that. Would you like to tell us a bit more about your background, please, Lama?
So my background in education started in 2014, so I'll start from there. I'm actually, born and mostly raised in the UAE. So the UAE and the culture here is very dear to my heart. And education became super dear to my heart thanks to a beautiful experience with Babilou. I joined the group when they opened their first office in Dubai in 2014. And from there, we grew into owning and operating the Blossom Nursery. So this year, we will have 31 branches. A little bit about the group is that we are a French group by origin. We celebrate 20 years this year. One of the global leaders in early childcare, and we are in 12 countries. We welcome more than 50,000 kids a day and work with 12,000 professionals. We are not in the UK, not in Bangladesh, but we are in the US, we are in South America, we're in India and Singapore and in Europe mostly. And we focus a lot on neuroscience with everything we do, actually. While the neuroscience drives our full curriculum, we're very locally relevant per country, so we implement different curriculums in the different countries. And we're members of the UNESCO group as the only childcare operator working with UNESCO on the mission to actually provide education to every child around the world. And at the core, we're working with the age group of 0 to 6, but we also have schools and university to graduate early child care educators. So as you can imagine, my journey has been quite eventful. I've been the CEO since 2018, but before that, I took on different roles. And I started by sitting in a nursery for a week to see on the ground what's happening and how everything works, and basically build myself up from there in the industry.
Again, a wealth of experience and all those global contexts as well. I can see there's some questions coming in, which is great, or some comments coming in. So if you can keep those coming in as they come. I apologise if my camera's fading a bit darker. But what we're going to do is start the discussion now. And then at the end, we'll spend about 10 minutes trying to answer some of your questions. So please feel free to add any questions as you want. You've all talked about working in different contexts. You've all talked about working in different cultures, which is brilliant. And what do we really see as the fundamental needs and rights of every young child, wherever they are? Is that easy to answer? Is that the same wherever we are? Matthew, would you like to start us off with that one, please?
I think it's interesting because you're talking about needs and rights. And I think, at its core, every child needs someone involved. I think Yuri Bronfenbrenner said, every child needs someone who's got an irrational, emotional relationship with the child. And that's first, last, and always. As a parent, I do have that irrational, emotional relationship with two children. And so I think, they need involved adults. I think that's what they need. What rights do they have? They have the right to participate. They have the right to play. Obviously, the general principles of the United Nations, the non-discrimination, life survival and development. And I think those really have guided my thinking as we've developed the curriculum, and gone through a review. But I think playful environments and play partners is at the key of early childhood.
I would agree with you completely. Lama, you said one of your things that you said on your bio was that anything can be done and you're always pushing those rights and needs of the children. Do you think your colleagues in all of those nurseries, I can't remember, you said about 50,000 children that you're meeting the needs of, do you think they all understand those rights that Matthew talked about and those needs for that person to really be in their corner?
Yeah, I think for you to be a part of this industry and this global mission, you have to have it innate in you to understand children's basic needs. And in addition to what Matthew mentioned, every employee or every early childcare professional must also understand that a child's basic needs from actually physical security, from actually providing them with food, with physical care, with physical safety, emotional safety is a prerequisite to be able to welcome those children. I speak a lot from the perspective of below the 6-year-olds, and their needs are stronger on the side of physical, emotional needs, because only then they can strive, only then they can play and then learn through play and become confident and independent and actually secure in their environment to welcome that learning experience. So yes, I mean, this is one of the main things we focus on, is for our educators and our caregivers to understand the basic needs of a child and to provide these needs so that a child can actually thrive and move into the next stage of playing, of learning through play, socializing, building their confidence and growing from there and preparing themselves for the future.
Thank you. I think it really is about children thriving, as you said, those emotional needs and children thriving. And Suzanne, you're obviously working with families who have taken a huge change in the way they educate their children. Do they still see the needs of their children in the same way, or the rights of their children in the same way, do you think?
I think it's in Boundless Life, we get a very different perspective because people are choosing to be here and they're choosing a different lifestyle for their kids. But having grown up, I grew up in India. So I've got all these different perspectives, especially for early years education. And I think for me, the biggest thing is having the kids, having their carers believe in them as individuals with different characters, different needs, just being little individuals and believing in them and meeting their needs at where they are is really key. I think we're very lucky because we get families who want something different for their kids. So I think it makes our job in many ways easier. But I'm always like, my heart in many ways is like with early years education for girls in India. That's something that I'm always supporting on the side. So it's perspective of where people are at.
And I think your families are taking a huge leap. And we were talking earlier on that you said even some of the families even sold their houses, haven't they, to fund their lifestyle. But going back to Matthew, not everybody has that opportunity to do that. Not all families are able to do that, are they, to be that global nomad and experience the boundless way of life, which is fantastic. Where are educators that you work with today? Because you work in lots and lots of different countries, where are they getting it right? What are they doing that's right, for early years to meet those needs?
I think they're understanding that children come from families, and actually their commitment to the child means a commitment to the family, involving the families, working to guide and inform and support the aspirations of the families. In the recent review, we just brought the family into the process of learning. So actually acknowledging explicitly within the curriculum the role of the family within the process of learning. We suggest to schools, because inevitably, as a curriculum provider, schools are the people that make the decisions based on the communities they serve. And a lot of it is sort of child interest led, understanding where the children are and being adaptable and flexible, taking a holistic approach to early education. Many countries seem to want to be able to measure the impact of an early years, so that they're able to say, well, this child will do well and this child may need a bit of extra support. But we know that the early years is much more fluid than that and tends to go on until about 7. If we look at the neuroscience that Lama was talking about, the brain really changes post 7, and most early years go to 5, 6. So I think trusting the process. We were having a discussion about my son, who is 3 3/4, not 3.5. And he's at nursery school, and actually I don't really know what he does every day, and I'm quite happy with that. He needs his own privacy, he needs his own space without me getting involved. And I think that's the balance of working with those families that all of the educators that I talk to find it a challenge. It is a challenge, but it's I like to say it's not a challenge, it's a privilege and a responsibility.
Oh, that's big, yeah. Privilege and responsibility.
We are privileged to some conversations that we would never have through the from the perspective of a 3-year-old, but with that comes great responsibility to hear it, to acknowledge it, and to support them to find out what's at the end of that conversation.
I 100% agree with you. There is that privilege and that responsibility, and we have to get it right, because we know that what we do with young children now will have an impact on their future. Lama, you work in your organisation Babilou works in many, many different countries, as you just said, maybe not the UK, but lots of other countries. How do you feel that educators are getting it right? Do you find that they vary quite a lot in their approach in the different countries? Obviously, we have cultural context, but how do you bring them all together, or bring them in to follow the journey that you want them to follow as educators?
Yeah. I mean, there is the global approaches, there is the global science, the neuroscience that's proving different practices are to be adopted. And it's important to note that neuroscience is not coming to undo or to say whatever is being done is not correct. It's just confirming and building on the good work that everyone is doing. And there is a lot of good work that's happening. And these educators, they get it right because they have the will for learning. They are welcoming of new findings and science, and they try to adapt them in their day-to-day. They are empowered and given leeway to basically use their judgment, understand the science, and apply and their practices to support the children on the ground. There's a lot of work as well done from a cultural point of view, cultural adaptability and inclusion in that sense, because yes, we are a global group, but in every country and sometimes in different brands per country, we are catering to a different type of families, and we're answering to those specific needs. So it is very important that they answer to every cultural need. From cultural differences. You know, in the UAE, you have so many nationalities, and it starts with International Day, for example, where we are very welcoming to every child's background. It's very important to infuse that in any curriculum, because it gives the child a sense of belonging, more confidence in where they come from, and a sense of being accepted for who they are and accepting others, and feeling that you have a feeling of inclusion. So they're doing an amazing job for sure when it comes to inclusion and cultural adaptation as well.
That's great to hear. Legislators. Are they, listening to us, we're saying how well educators are moving forward and meeting the needs of children. How much are we on the same pathway as legislators? How much do legislators, and again, you're all working in different countries, how much do legislators understand your approaches and what you're doing? Because as Matthew just said, they are, they want to measure. So Matthew, in your experience, is that restricting? I'm not saying there's anybody's fault, but are legislators a little bit behind where educators are maybe, or are they asking the right questions?
I think that's really interesting, because I've worked in countries where the legislators are slightly ahead of the teachers as well. So they've got a more sort of progressive approach, but it hasn't filtered down to the teachers that might, or the educators, or the support staff, all the adults who may not have such a progressive approach. So there is a disconnect. And it can be very easy to say, well, as educators we've got it right and the legislators haven't. I don't think that is true globally. I think that actually it can be done by country, it can be done by region, it can be done by location. I was very lucky in Bangladesh. I worked with displaced communities that would be cut off during monsoon season, and the curriculum wasn't flexible enough to adapt to that reality. It had been imposed, and it was, you work your way through this. I think that it would benefit from communication, but also I do think that legislators or curriculum providers or people with a leadership role across communities of schools actually have to really work on making sure that their initiatives are flexible. They may institute initially to identify principles and practices, etc. But teachers and schools, in my opinion, are some of the most creative organizations, and creativity is a community resource. Any initiative you should understand that it needs to be adapted. That's what our schools are telling us across the community, that actually they need to be the people making the decisions within a context about what's right for the communities they serve.
It's all about good communication, isn't it? And good partnership. And Suzanne, I'm sure because you've got Boundless Life in different places now, I think you're just opening up in Bali soon. When you go to a new location, how do you get it across to the legislators? How do you get it across the education community that's already there about what you're doing and why you're doing that?
So I think it's a lot of education on our part, educating the people involved. We're in the process of getting the licenses for Bali, but we've had, we're in the process with IEYC to accredit our curriculum and everything we do. it's giving guidelines, but then saying that these guidelines are literally guidelines. And what you do in the classroom has to be led by the children.
Mm-hmm.
And I that is, I think, the key to it, that not being afraid that we're not ticking all the boxes, and allowing for educators who know the kids, who believe in these little people and know these kids, to lead what is happening in the classroom. And I think for legislation, you need to have the paperwork. I mean, that's what they need to see. But like Matthew said, there is a disconnect there. And the disconnect is, what if they have the paperwork and you're ticking the boxes in the paperwork, rarely do they come and look at the nitty-gritty of what's happening in the classroom. There are countries where they want a lesson plan every week, and then there are countries like in Finland that these are the guidelines. But if you don't reach these milestones, that's okay too. So I think that's the Finnish education is the heart of what we do. That's what inspired everything. And empowering the educators that trust your judgment, trust the kids, trust what the kids want to learn. If they are engaged, they're excited. I gave the example before the call about, a child that was with us for one day yesterday as a trial. And her mom, they were going back to, I was corrected, not London, but Reading today. And it was great. She's 4 years old. And the mom said this morning she cried when she heard she wasn't coming back today. That is what we need more of.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You've all got fantastic global perspectives. And in my experience of trying to, working in the UAE for many years, and many people then using for instance, the UK EYFS and the EYFS and bringing it in, that actually causes lots of problems. You've all talked about that cultural context. How global, I'm kind of asking Lama this to start off with, how global can our education really be? Can we really be the same in all of those different settings and all those different countries? Or is the culture, is the family's culture and the culture of the society different, that we really have to adapt it quite a lot? Or is it becoming more and more similar?
Definitely there are principles that have to remain global, but we have to go local as well. And local is in two dimensions. It's cultural in one dimension, if you want, but it's also the fact that every child is unique. Every child develops at a different speed and have different unique properties. And today we no longer talk about a blanket approach with children. We talk really about a personalized approach with every child, giving that flexibility and that empowerment to our educators to be able, and of course the knowledge and whatever tools they need to be able to implement any curriculum in a very local, personalized way to the child level. So what we do, for example, in our Blossom nurseries in the UAE, we use the EYFS framework, but it's blended with Reggio Emilia and Emi Pecler, for example. Why? Because there's beautiful elements from every curriculum, and it's really up to the educator to take advantage of the great curriculums that are available and to use what works in the moment, because we also follow the in the moment planning to be able to deliver the best optimized experience for the child.
Okay, thank you. And following on from that, I think all of those make sense if the educator has the tools to deliver those, if they have the tools to understand how to blend those different curriculums together. And I know, Matthew, you have been working the last 2 years to bring curriculum change to the early years within the group that you're working with. How well do the educators have those tools? And I'm going to come to Suzanne about this in a minute, because your way of working for educators could be quite different. So are there barriers to educators? They want to be there, they want to have this approach, but have they got the skills, the confidence, the background to deliver what we need them to deliver, what children need them to deliver?
not entirely, but learning is a process. Curriculum mature. You know, once you start implementing the curriculum, the second year you will implement it better. When I first started teaching, I was always told you weren't a proper teacher until the third year. The first year you made all the mistakes. The second year you got rid of those mistakes but introduced new ones. And the third year you were like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. I can teach properly. And I think there has to be some reality if you're implementing a curriculum framework, curriculum for the first time. There will be things that speak out to all the different adults, the families, and the children within it. And so curriculum will be taken in interesting ways. You know, in 480 schools around the world, the curriculum is being used in different ways every minute of every day. So is
it about taking educators on that journey with you then? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah. And I think, but also leaders, obviously, you know, school leaders provide the tools and the processes, the structures that support their teachers to understand the curriculum, how they can interact with it, how they can use it, how they can flex it. A sort of little anecdote, I always remember when I was teaching in London, we always used to do something on birthdays quite early in the year. We knew that 3-year-old children were experts on birthdays. And one child would come and want to make cakes out of Play-Doh. Another child would want to make birthday cakes. Another child would want to count candles, usually, and, you know, in the first child's Play-Doh cake that they'd made, which would cause some tension, some connections, let's say connections.
Yeah.
Another child would want to tell me about the sort of strawberry cake that they'd ate 6 months ago at their mother's birthday. And, you know, early years professionals are skilled professionals, but they will continue to learn through their interactions with children, and being able to flex a curriculum and flex an activity to meet those diverse stories that children bring with them to every school, is as I said, that it's that privilege and responsibility again. It keeps rearing its head. You know,
I think that when you're talking about educated professionals, and I hear at the moment that there's not enough of those to go round for a start, that we're all struggling to find the people we want to do. But Suzanne, especially for you are asking your educators to work in quite a different way for some of them, maybe a very open way. And I know you kind of like, you've started your journey and Boundless Life is going to go on and extend its journey. How are you finding recruiting educators and what are you kind of like looking for? Are there any problems that they have in trying to put your vision into practice?
I think when we're looking for educators, I look beyond the CV. I look for what can you bring in. I interviewed someone from Bali the other day. And she asked me, she said, can I bring Balinese traditions in? And I said, that's exactly what we want. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we want. We want, you know, you have the training and you assume the training is good. But I think I love what Matthew said, that learning is a journey. And it's not just for the kids, it's for adults. The one thing I will always like interview kind of ends for me is when somebody says, oh, I've done this for so long, I know it all. I think we're learning every day. I'm learning something new every day from the kids, from the educators who are implementing. They're the ones on the ground. And what we really do is we look for that mindset and the vision that they have and the openness, the flexibility. And then we take, before we start any destination, we have 2 weeks of online training and 2 weeks of face-to-face training where we onboard the team to what Boundless is, why we are what we do. And I always say to people, forget what you've learned. Take the good, but open your minds to everything else. And when you open your minds, and no matter where you're from, you will find a way forward with these kids. And these kids have amazing experiences. Coming into Tuscany, the art, the food, the culture here, Syros, Greece, the culture there, each destination pulling on that culture, pulling on the local expertise. And the local expertise might not have the same level of teacher education or early years education that some others would have, but the richness of their local experiences, that's what enhances what we have. So,
I'm going to enroll in your schools anyway.
love it.
I'm coming, definitely.
He's going to join with his boys.
Oh, yeah, we're all going to be there. Lama, going back to you, we keep mentioning about culture. So we're thinking about overall in this webinar, thinking about giving children globally what they need. And obviously we've got to do that with, as Matthew just said, with professional educators who are knowledgeable. The UAE and the Middle East, for me, is a particularly interesting place because it is, the culture in there is one culture, but it's adopted quite a Western approach to education. You can disagree with me on this, I think. But a lot of the educators there are still from the Far East, haven't they, that come into the UAE and come into the Middle East. So we've got a mixture of cultures, haven't we? How do we blend, or can we blend those cultures to make the best of the educators and provide the best for the children? How do you do that?
By educating and continuously educating ourselves and our educators. I think I will take it from our Blossom context, just because I know what we're doing to ensure actually this blend is working, is that we have our own internal academy. And so we are making sure that we train and we give the cash trainings to all our staff on the ground, or refreshers of the cash, because there's always also developments and improvements in any curriculum. We work a lot on coaching on the ground. There is also the peer-to-peer learning. There is shadow teaching, just to make sure that the new blends into the old, and then everyone starts to have that dynamic and synergy in what's happening in a classroom or a nursery. Because of course, anyone joining the team in any nursery or any classroom is going to come with their own set of what they've learned in the past, what they've practiced in the past. But we definitely have from there the responsibility to harmonize everyone and to continuously work on improving the level of knowledge for everyone. There's also what's great as well is that we do a lot of global sharing of practices. We don't also limit ourselves to local sharing. We have a program which is called jumelage, or twinning in English. So we pair a nursery here with a nursery, for example, in France or in Singapore. And so on a specific schedule, a specific classroom goes on Zoom with another classroom in another country, and they exchange a certain story or a song. And so you have a teacher in French singing a song, or the classroom singing a song to a classroom here. And this really opens up the mindset of educators, of the kids. They even send each other's boxes of things that they've done, and the kids can also look at each other's boxes. And these are all experiences that actually helps the educator really step out from the day-to-day and really have that exposure, that visibility, but also that sense of you are important. And we should value our educators really more and more, because they don't get the value or the recognition they deserve.
Definitely.
And when you do that, you're giving them the recognition, you're giving them exposure, global exposure, local exposure. You're very transparent, and you're very generous in your trainings, in your information sharing. They are receptive of that, and they will enjoy it, and they will flourish, and they will make you proud.
Yeah, because you're empowering them and you're giving them autonomy and control, aren't you?
They
and
are in charge.
Resources. Yeah.
They are in charge. We are there to serve them, to help them. They are in charge of the day-to-day job, not us, really.
And Matthew talked about it a bit earlier on when he talked about for his own child that he was happy to say, you are the professionals in the child's nursery, in his son's nursery. You get on with your job. I trust you. We've talked about, and Matthew, coming back to you again now, you've talked about family as being part of all this and the needs of families. Do you think families are now, and again, thinking globally, beginning to understand the importance of early years? Lama just said we are important. Early years is a profession, but sometimes compared to primary and secondary, we don't get as much acknowledgement as our other colleagues. But really, if we don't get it right, I don't think they can do a good job either. But so do you think parents are coming to understand? And then I'm going to ask Suzanne the same question because her parents have taken that big leap of faith. Do you think parents understand now more?
Well, I'm a parent and I do. So I think
you're an educationist. So that doesn't quite, but the person on the street,
probably not. I don't think they understand the significance. I think one of the things that parents do at the start of their children's early years career is they invest a huge amount of trust in whatever setting they have chosen for their child. I'm an educator. When my son was 2 and he started nursery school, I was not entirely comfortable, I will admit. It was the first time that we'd ever left him. And as I walked home, there were many, ridiculous daydream scenarios going through my head. But trust is the beginning. And I think it is our job as educators, as curriculum developers, as school setting groups, to understand and work with that trust to explain the importance. Most parents want their children to be very successful. Parents have different conceptions of that success. I think one of the things they don't understand, and I really think we have a responsibility to do, is to explain that young children are better learners than any adult will be a teacher.
Yeah.
And if we provide the right environment with the holistic experiences, we will build the foundation upon which they will thrive cognitively, socially, physically, and academically in the future. We know how important the early years is. And, the UK, you're talking about the IEYC, which has quite a acknowledged academic approach to judging the effectiveness of an early years. They have found that attendance at an early years setting can make the difference of 1 grade in 7 subjects when a child is 16.
It is about measure. It's obviously we need to measure it. We need to make sure we're successful for those children, but it is about making parents understand the importance of a child being 2 and allowed to be 2 and allowed to be 3. And it's not all about future success. Of course that comes, but it's about what they need now.
But the best judge of that is parents and teachers, not government.
Parents are the expert in their own children, aren't they? We are the expert in education. I'm going to just ask Suzanne one more question about parents, and then I'm going to ask you, because we're running out of time now, just to sum up, so I'm going to come back to each of you and just to sum up to say what you really think children need, or, how well you are providing it, or so what can we really provide. But Suzanne, can I just ask about your parents again? So obviously, as we've said, they've made a big leap. They've made a decision to, when you speak to them, I'm sure you get a lot of interaction with them. How have they come to that route? How have they come to that understanding?
Currently, a lot of the parents are world schoolers who already have that mindset. But as in the year that we've had Boundless, I see more and more families coming out of the traditional system and embracing what we have and realizing that I think one of the biggest questions, and Matthew, you said referred to this, in Finland, education starts at the age of 7, and there are no expectations for kids academically when they step into first grade. That the value of that is huge. And I think more and more parents are seeing that value. And that's what convincing the parents that are stepping out of the traditional system to say, this is why we start at 7. And we get a lot of pushback sometimes, like, oh, but my child is in year 1 in the UK at the age of 5, you know. And we said, but the value of what we offer in the early years, yes, they'll still have opportunities to read and write if they are ready. And I think that's the key. If the kids are ready, you have some kids. I've got 3 boys. They're all in their 20s, and they're as different as can be academically. And same mother and father. So, you know.
Childhood is not a race, is it? And lots of parents think it is a race. You have to, the earlier they do this, the earlier they read, the earlier they write. And I think some primary schools have perpetuated that, probably unwittingly, by saying we expect them to do this, this, and this. So for me, that's kind of one of the big messages, that early childhood is not a race, and it is about what is right for the child now. Kind of what is your big message, or what kind of thought would you like to finish on? Because we've got quite a lot of questions here. I know that's very open-ended. Lama, just going to put that in your lap. Kind of, what do you want people to take away from today? You know, can we have a global education? Are we going the right direction? Anything that you just want to finish with?
I want everyone to really register the fact that early education is not anymore a luxury or a service to have just to take care of kids while the parents are working. A child's brain is developing at 85% below the age of 5. And if we get it wrong and those neuron connections are not happening the right way, we can really impact their future in learning. We have to make sure as educators that we get it right by having the right teams in place and empowering them with the knowledge they need to help the children. It's really a global responsibility, and I wish that every child has access to education one day, and we actually basically help create a better world.
That's lovely. It really is. You're really right. It's not a luxury. Children deserve the best, don't they, when they're little? Okay, we've got about another 10 minutes, and we've got some questions. Suzanne, could you sum it up briefly? What message you'd like to leave us with, please?
I think Lama said it all. Educating, to me, adding to that, educating parents, having opportunities like this that are open to anybody who would love to join, and spreading the word on the importance of early years education, that it's not when you hit primary or university, but building that foundation in early years is key. And the more we put it out there and educate families, educate more educators, prepare them, I think we're looking at a better world.
Definitely. Thank you. And last but not least, Matthew, what would you like to leave our audience with?
Children are more complex than we will understand, and they will know things that we don't know. Their brains are designed to learn, take in their environment with the technology and the access to information that we cannot predict is going to happen over the next 5 years. Children will have fascinations upon which we as educators can lay that neurological architecture that we know will absolutely support them through their ongoing learning journey that goes throughout life. They're on the same journey that we're all on.
Yeah. And they've each got their own pathway, haven't they? There's not one way, is there? They've each got their own pathway, and recognizing that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Matthew. That has just whizzed past. I wish we had more time. I can see there's quite a few questions. Danny, I don't know if you can scroll back because I've lost some questions. And I have to say, I've seen there's people from Zanzibar, there's people from Lebanon. Hello, Hannah. There's people from the UAE. There's a whole host of people listening, which is absolutely fantastic, because I really want to raise the level of professional of early years and that recognition of all that you've been saying. So Danny, can you read any of the questions out?
Sure, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for your valuable insight. We do have time, a few minutes to try to get to some questions. There's a couple of questions from Hamdi, both specific to certain panelists as well as to the group. A question for Lama. From your experience, what are the most important 3 factors, perhaps, in running you could say corporate-driven, early years school?
I don't know if you view yourself as a corporate-driven early years.
Or in early years, let's say school. What are the 3 important, let's say, factors in the success?
I would say I would add the corporate part at the end, but I will start maybe most importantly, the right people in place. So I cannot stress enough on the importance of having the right team in place and to treat them well and to really continuously help them grow. As nurseries, you need to have the facilities that are safe, that are engaging, that provides the right learning experience for the children. And if you want to add the corporate thing on top, which is the cherry on top of the cake, you need the corporate team that actually believes in that and strongly believes in the mission of education and spreading education for the wrong reasons, because only a leadership team that has that vision for growth in the right place can grow a corporation in the right direction.
Yeah, support them. Thank you. Danny, I can see a question here for probably ask Suzanne this question, if you don't mind me. It's from Sarah Martinitz, and she says, good evening from Korea. She said, I would like to know a bit more about the idea of not disruption education when they have to transition and they need to adapt to different countries, cultures, environments. So Suzanne, how do your children adapt as they move around the world? Because they're definitely moving, aren't they?
I think we've created an environment that when you walk into any of our education centers, the look and feel is the same. So we have similar furniture, similar material. The educators are chosen with the same criteria, with the same mindset. And the curriculum is very similar. So we give guidelines for the curriculum, but how you deliver it is up to you. So we have these similarities, and when they walk in and say, oh, wow, this looks like where I was before. And when you have your family unit, we have a lot of community events to bring the families together. And what we've noticed is families start finding like-minded families, and they'll decide, oh, let's go to this place together. And
so it's more about ethos, isn't it, than the actual physical buildings, or that, it's more about your ways of doing things and your.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things I'd just like to add there, because I know there was a question about socioeconomic, it's not priced out when you think you're not paying for your house, you're not paying a mortgage, you're not paying bills, you're not paying, carers. We have movie nights where families are free and the kids are with the educators. When you have all of that coupled with the experiences that the family gets, I think the financial factor, it levels the playing field a little bit more.
And makes the transition a bit easier as well.
It does.
Sorry, I'm reading the questions as well. And Matthew, I'm going to give you this one. They're very long questions. So which is really good, because that means that people have really kind of listened to what we're saying. So he said, Agnes Bunker, I'm not quite sure where she's from. Are there inclusions and exclusions as far as teaching methods are concerned? So we mentioned about Reggio, and she says, I'm wondering why it was accepted in the curriculum. I know, Lama, you talked about that as well, and why other methods, i.e. Montessori, are not. I'm not sure why they're not. But then this bit for Matthew, is there a preference by the government and early years professionals? How do you satisfy parents who would like to see their children reach their high potential at an early age? There you go. There's a little question for you, Matthew.
When I was teaching, and something that I suggest to schools across the network of IEYC schools, is find out what the parents want their children to learn in the first 4 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Do they want them to learn how to put their sandals on? Do they want them to learn how to hang their coat up? Do they want them to learn how to brush their teeth? And use that to scaffold the discussion through the year. So every time that you have a incidental meeting, a planned conference, parent-teacher conference, they're called very many different things the whole world over. But every time you meet with parents, start with that.
Okay.
How are they doing with their brushing their teeth? Or we've been working on their brushing the teeth. Have you seen an improvement? Because then parents understand that their perspectives are being listened to, rather than education is being done to their child away from the parents. It's a partnership. It is a partnership. It's privilege and responsibility.
You can have those words as your strap line, aren't you?
We, as adults with insight into the life of a 3, 4, 5-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old, we have that responsibility to work in collaboration and in partnership, because the children will notice if that is not happening. And the one thing that I do say to all of our schools, and it is reflected back from our schools, it's what they're telling us, is sometimes, usually, a lack of communication does not mean a lack of commitment. It just means the parents are very busy providing the environment for their children. And, as the professionals, usually paid, we have a responsibility to find that right channel to have that communication with parents.
It is that ongoing dialogue, isn't it? Is that understanding as well, that they want them to succeed, and of course they do later in life. They, to give them what they need now in the early years is really important too. I know we're nearly running out of time, Danny. You'll have to tell me when to stop. A really, really nice, easy one, Lama, for you here. Is there any blossom in the KSA in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? Is there a blossom there?
No, in the Middle East and the GCC, we're only in the UAE.
Okay, well, maybe one day soon we can. That's from the UK. Danny, have you seen any other questions? I'm just... Okay.
So there's one from, or more of a comment from Rana. She's talking about Saudi Arabia again. She's saying that I'm running an early childhood setting in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Al Khobar. I used to run a center in Sydney, Australia, bringing the learning style and basing the curriculum on children's needs and interests was not an easy thing to explain to families who are used to boxed curriculums. I'm trying my best to educate my educators and my families. Wish me luck. Thank you for the great advice. So any other wishing her luck?
Fantastic. And it is a journey. It's a journey for all of us, isn't it? We've already mentioned that. It's a journey for educators, a journey for parents, and certainly we hope it's a journey that the children are going to enjoy as well. One last question, and I don't mind who answers this. So, how can contemporary visions of early education enhance our understanding and approaches to fostering positive behaviour in children? How can our contemporary visions of early education enhance our understanding and approach to fostering positive behaviour in children? And I think that's from a person called Gayatri Kakade, I think is how we pronounce the name. Anybody like just to finish it off about on a positive note? How does our visions help positive? Go for it, Matthew. Thank you.
I think I'm probably stealing Lama's because as she's really looked into the neuroscience. Very young children go through a co-regulation phase where their relationships with familiar adults supports them to self-regulate. They have to, dysregulated children lead to extreme behavior, and actually they're only supported to self-regulation through a phase of co-regulation. I know I talk about my sons a lot, but I have my most interesting conversations every day with my 3.5-year-old. 3 3/4. But I also have my biggest battles. And actually, he dysregulates me, and we need to co-regulate together to support him through that phase, because it is a phase.
It's learning for us as adults, isn't it, as well as learning for the children.
I'm hoping it's a phase.
2 words. 2 words: emotional security.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes, thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you so much, Matthew. And thank you so much, Lama. And thank you, Danny, for hosting this and Guest for hosting it. You could hear that we could go on all day, but I know we have to stop now. So thank you very, very much for everybody who's joined us. I hope you've enjoyed it and spread the good word about the importance of early years. It's definitely not a luxury, as Lama said. So thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Sarah, very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all really so much. As I said, that was really inspiring and informative. Fortunately, because of time restrictions, we couldn't get to all the questions, but we'll try to get to them after the webinar, perhaps by email. Or if anyone would like to connect with the speakers, I saw a few comments of some of the attendees wanted to connect with the panelists. Please send an email to marketing@gesseducation.com. You'll also be redirected to a short survey once we end the webinar. So please tell us what you thought and if there are any topics you'd like to hear about in the near future. Thank you again to our sponsor, Kinderpedia, an all-in-one digital solution for schools and nursery management and communication. We'll just push a pop-up on the screen now so you can download their complimentary ebook, Active Learning, to discover the benefits, tools, and techniques of actively engaging students in the classroom. Just give me a moment. Perfect. And if you want to enjoy the webinar all over again, you can do so, as we'll be uploading it to our GESS Education website as well as our YouTube channel, and we'll also be sending it out to all attendees by email. A massive thank you to our panel and also you, our audience, for tuning in. We'll be announcing our upcoming webinar for June very soon. It's going to discuss a very important topic that has been widely requested by the community, so please make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter. Follow us on social media and visit gesseducation.com to stay informed of not only our upcoming webinars, but our in-person events as well. You'll also find some really insightful articles that we publish on behalf of our amazing education community. Some members that were in today's webinar, including Dr. Sarah, who recently wrote a great article on considering special educational needs in the early years. Thank you all once again for tuning in. Until next time, please take care and have a great day, evening, or night, wherever you're based around the world. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Brilliant. Thanks, Danny.
We're done.
Thank you.